The Blink 1 is an analog, so it will not work on your iPhone. The armband is a digital signal, and it is Bluetooth, and it'll work on your iPhone. Is that okay? Get the difference between an analog radio, I know, and a Bluetooth Ant Plus? Yeah. Mike brought up a good point. In an analog, it's a radio wave, and if we put two of those waves together, they disrupt each other and they add up. On a digital signal, there's no crosstalk, there's no interference, it's pure digital. So I love the Blink armbands for that. I love the Blink 1s for the simplicity that it is. Typically, T1 and T2 are 20 to 30 beats difference. The highest I've seen is 50. The lowest I've seen is 10 beats, which is a tiny little yellow zone if all I have is 10 beats. If, like, I think Mike, what is the difference between T2 and heartbeats?
50.
He's 50 beats. He has a big yellow zone. He's really good at burning fat. There are 3 different field tests for threshold. The Can You Speak Comfortably Foster Threshold field test was developed by Carl Foster. Carl is a PhD at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. He is considered one of the world's leading experts on assessments and tests. The test you just took, the Can You Speak Comfortably Foster Threshold field test that he developed, has been published in over 20 peer-reviewed scientific journals. The science behind Heart Zones training is enormous. Carl is on our faculty. Carl Foster is on our faculty. He reviews everything that we write and read, and puts his stamp of approval that this is the latest in exercise science. And exercise science does change with time. So we're going to take a little education, and we're going to go back and do a different field test. We're going to do a little bit more education. We're going to come back and do a different field test. This is a little bit of review on zoning, because I'm about to leave zoning, so I want to make sure everybody understands zoning before I depart from zoning. Zoning is based on 3 easy steps. If you are beginning or a novice, or you're returning to fitness, I would recommend you get a Blink watch. They're not very expensive. They're on the heartzones.com website. And I would get a copy of the book, Zoning, Fitness in a Blink. And there are going to be some DVDs that are coming out. And the 3 things you need to know about zoning, if you can memorize them, it's all that you need to remember, is time. 5 minutes in blue, that's my warm-up. 20 minutes in yellow, yellow and red is fine, but 20 minutes and 5 minutes in cool down. That is the minimum amount of exercise I'd like you to get every single day. That's when I get started. And then I want to progress. I want to add more training load. I want to add more of this wonderful medicine called exercise. So then I might do 5 in blue, 30 minutes in yellow and red, because I'm fitter. And then 5 minutes, and then 5 minutes in blue. So warm up, time in these wonderful zones, and cool down. If I was just getting started, I was brand new to fitness, I would stay in blue for the first 6 weeks. All I'm going to do is walk on that treadmill in blue, ride that bike. Or I might say, I want 5 minutes on a treadmill, 5 minutes on an elliptical, 5 minutes maybe jumping rope or some other activity that you fall, dancing, whatever you fall in love. Heart Zones training is A to Z, from aerobics to Zumba, everything you do in cardio. And we're going to collect data. We're going to use sensors. We're going to get biofeedback. And we're going to do better because of that. And it's a change in behavior. It's a change in thinking. It's a change in possibly way I've been doing it in the past, which is put on my running shoes, do the same workout every day, and not get any change or benefits, or we call it adaptation, which is I want to get fitter and fitter and fitter. So I'm taking you from a starting point to where we're going in blue, yellow, and red. So the first is time. The second is called effort, blue, yellow, red. Different calories or different benefits, different body's response happen in each of the zones. And the last one is called variety. The human body, and I'm going to, Lisa, can you come up here for a second? The human body does not want monotony. If somebody is beeping, if you just push your select button, can I put my hands on you? Yes. So this is what the body wants. It wants stress, recovery. Stress, recovery. What happens to your physiology if it's stress, 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 stress all the time? Do you get fitter? Do you get worse? Yes. And in some disciplines, people are exercising every single day with stress, 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 and they don't let the recovery, I see some smiles in the room, correct, Trevor, because we want this physiology to change. So the other thing the body wants, and it doesn't want the same modality, it doesn't want to, I swim every day, I'm a swimmer, all I do is swim. It wants cross-training. I invented the word cross-training. I first wrote about it in the early 1990s when I said, you will do better if you change just like what activities you're doing. So I want Lisa to dance one day. I don't care if it's hip hop, I don't care what it is, but I want you to do a lot of yellow dancing. And at first you go, you want me to do dancing in yellow? Yes. You put on your blink and every workout that you're going to do, and you're going to do zone training. That's what we're doing. And you're going to go, aha. I get why I've been doing the same thing and I haven't gotten any change. I haven't gotten any fitter because all I do is the same thing. Okay, stress and recovery, thank you. When I wrote the Heart Rate Monitor Guidebook, I said, how am I going to get people to read about more about their interests? So I wrote a chapter called Sex and the Heart Rate Monitor. And then the PE teacher said, well, I don't know if we should give this book to children. And I laughed. And so I encourage you, the point of that story is and there's a lot of research behind what happens to your body in different positions, in different activities, in different emotional experiences. So I encourage you to read and learn more about using this powerful, powerful tool. Okay, so we have, and I want you to understand, two different charts that you have been seeing. I would like to walk into every health club and every place, every physical therapist studio, wherever, and tear those charts down because they're old science. It's not how the body works. And I would like it replaced, and I'll send everybody a free PDF, and you can blow them up, or you can buy them from us, you can ask me to give them to you for free. I don't care. I want you to have the correct information and educate people at your facilities. So there are two. Zoning is where I encourage you to get started. Zoning is simple. Zoning, did you get it kind of immediately when I said blue, yellow, red? It wasn't. So I had these fourth graders in a school physical education class. They had never worn a heart rate monitor before. The PE teacher was really hesitant about using them because you have to put these chest straps on. And I said, no, you don't do that anymore. You slide this on. How many seconds did it take? Took 3 seconds. You say to the kids, okay, I want you to go to the big board. What number? And the kid would be number 2. And I'd say, okay, what color are you in? The kid would look at number 2 and say, I'm in blue, Sally. And I'd say, yes, now here is your exercise assignment. They're playing pickleball. I looked at 40 kids in a school cafeteria. They were going every which way because at fourth grade they can't really hit it very easily, and the balls they were running everywhere into each other. And the kids, before they put on their heart rate monitors and they understood the heart zone system, they would then wait while the kid would chase the ball, and they would hit each other and misbehave. They put it on. I said, you're going to play pickleball in the yellow, and you're number 2. I need you. A fourth grader. What do you have to do to get in yellow? And this fourth grader, what are they, 8, 9 years old in the fourth grade? Said, I got to go faster. I said, I know. And when it goes to red, what do? They knew this. I have to slow down. And the PE teacher, after 2 minutes, walked over to me and he said, Sally, I need this system, don't I? I said, yes, and we'll help you yes, you need this system. I know it costs a little money, but we're going to make this happen. And he said they changed their behavior. They are now doing jumping jacks when the ball goes over there. And they're doing push-ups. And they're totally fixated on getting in the yellow zone and doing what the assignment was. And he said, I just bought a bunch of pedometers. I said, can you send them back and buy heart rate monitors? Okay, so now I'm going to take you into a little bit more, if you're ready to move with me, a little more advanced training, a little more sophistication, a little more fine-tuning in the threshold training system that has 5 zones, that has numbers, that has more exercise science on it, and that some people would prefer. And so zoning is really kind of the new to fitness. I'm just getting going. And then you might want to say, I want to progress if I'm a fitness professional or teacher, maybe I'm going to have the high school students do 5 zones. And in here, we calculate something called points. And there is a column right here called training load, and I'm going to explain it. And I'm going to now shift us, if you're okay, to threshold training. And that is the chart. And again, we now have numbers, so we're going to now say go to zone 1, go to zone 2, and we still can have colors. We're going to say go to blue, go to green. And as we progress, we still start with a starting heart rate, we still have T1, and we still have T2. It's exactly the same. All we've done is take these zones and split them into 2. And sure enough, as exercise intensity, increases, this change in our metabolic response, the sum of all of our calories burned during an activity changes. This describes it. This tells you how many seconds, these are points, exercise points in time and zone. And time and zone is the number of minutes that I'm in each of these zones. We have the big board now set up as a threshold, and it's just a flip a switch and I can do this. So number 1, is that Tim, has been in the blue zone for 23 minutes, the green zone for 9 minutes, 4 minutes, 1 minute, and he hasn't been into red yet. Good job. When we did the threshold field test, we didn't want to go to red, so good job. So I love the threshold chart. I filed a patent on it 8 years ago. I could not release this information or release the book Zoning until the patent had been approved. This is the first patent that's ever been given to a cardiovascular training program in the history of America. It was not easy to do. These patents are not fun to go through, but I wanted to protect our intellectual property and to share with people the system without having our material stolen. Here are the most important parts of the threshold training system and why I love threshold versus maximum heart rate, which we used to use. You can still use it. Maximum heart rate is valuable. But the second bullet point is weight. Weight is how much of this, and I want you to imagine, if it's okay, I'm going to use you, Cindy, as an example. How much of this miracle grow, this wonderful exercise am I putting on your physiology, needs to be different, Sharon, than how much I put on yours. Mm-hmm. Your goals might be different. Your history might be different. Your physiology for sure is different because you might have been training for 1 year and you've been training for 10 years. So we have to vary the weight, the training load, the exercise stress, the time and zone based on points. So 1 minute in zone 1 is worth 1 point. 1 minute in zone 2 is worth 2 points. All I'm going to take is the minutes, time, the zone number. 3 minutes in zone 3 would be 3 times 3 would be 9 points. 10 minutes in zone 4, I'd multiply 10 times 4 would be 40 points. So as an exercise prescription, I'd say you need to be at so many points during this workout. And it makes it really easy when you're exercising. And you can write this down on your tablet or somewhere. I want you to get, in 30 minutes, 100 points. I want you in 45 minutes to get 150 points. And in an hour, 60 minutes, I want you to get 200 points. And those numbers come from a lot of the science behind what we are now sharing in terms of the exercise stress. So if I spent 30 minutes in zone 3, that golden zone, remember I said I want you to spend 30 minutes, if you can, in zone 3, how many points would you get? You get 90 points. That's where the magic comes from. It's this miracle grow. I want you to get points. 100 points, when most of your time would be in zone 3. But if I was doing intervals, I wouldn't spend much time. I'd spend time here and here, right? But I wouldn't get very many points here, but I'd get a lot of points up here. So intervals are fine. Spending all my time here, warming up and cooling down, or I could do low intervals there. Okay. So we're going to calculate what your heart rate values are, and I want to show you it has nothing to do with age. So a dear friend of mine that I've trained with for 40-some years is named Pinkhouse. His name is Paul. He is, in this example, he is 93. And then another woman, Tribev, she's 74. And she's younger than our 93-year-old. And I would like everyone, 93 or 74, it doesn't matter, to continue to be exercising. And then how high these heart rates are doesn't matter. What matters is you have your zones. So you'll notice that the difference between her starting heart rate and her T1 is only 10 beats, pretty small. She has a very narrow zones, Tribev. Pinkhouse, who's 90, has much wider zones. And SpongeBob, who's the youngest of the group, those are relatively normal. Probably about 50% of America's zones are 120 to 140 or 150. There's about a 20 or 30 beat spread. But in this example, which Pinkhouse is at a 30 beat spread, she's at a 12 beat spread. I can't look at you and know this. We need to go do the threshold field tests. We're about to go do a couple of more. So there's a way to calculate those zones. All you're going to do is take T1 and T2, go to the midpoint of it, and that's going to be your zone range. It's pretty easy to calculate. I want to make sure we know what a zone is and the parts of a zone, because when we do zone training, I'm going to use some language. So zones have tops and bottoms. And the top of zone 3 is the bottom of what zone? 4. Zone 4. So there's a point where the tops and the bottoms meet. There are midpoints. So the midpoint of zone 4 would be right here in the middle heart rate number. And sometimes we teach by midpoints. They have weight. What's the weight for each minute I'm in zone 4? 4. So is that heavier than zone 1? By a lot. And so I'm going to burn more calories up here because I'm having more stress than down here. Is the blue zone really important? Yes. Oh, yeah. For a lot of people, that's where we just want them down here in blue and green. Don't go anywhere else, okay? Let's just let's fall in love. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do. We're trying to fall in love with exercise. Find what you love, find the zones you love, spend time in different zones. You're getting? Yeah, you got it. Okay. Training is different than exercise. Why? Goal-oriented. So training has a sequence which is stress, recovery, adaptation. Stress, recovery, adaptation. So this is positive. There's 2 types of stress, negative and positive. You can stress too much and it's negative, but if you keep just stress, recovery, you're going to do well. Most days of the week, this is the American College of Sports Medicine. It's the leading governing and research-based academy that we have in the United States. And the recommendations for America, and I'm going to ask you the question, how many Americans do you think are doing the minimum amount of exercise? The minimum amount of exercise is most days of the week, 30 to 60 minutes in moderate. What color is moderate? Yellow. And now? Orange. Correct. So what percent of our population in America today is doing 30 to 60 minutes most days of the week in yellow and orange? 8. Who said 8? Very good. 8 is the correct. Only 8% of Americans. You might say, well, what are we going to do about that? And hopefully you're going to do what Morningside Recovery is doing here. You're going to bring in some tools, some education. You're going to train your entire staff because everybody needs to be on board, not just the fitness facility. It's a mindset of what, and we need to be examples of what we're asking other people to do. We need to do the minimum amount of exercise. And if you're not doing it, this is the tragedy. You're probably going to get sick. That's a very strong statement. You're probably going to get sick if you don't do at least the minimum. I want you to do the optimum. The optimum means this is my lifestyle. I'm active throughout my day. I care about my health. Well, I'm going to put on a couple little tools and keep track of it. Zone training is based on and quantifying and measuring exercise. We have a tool to do that for the first time. And here are some of those basics. Dosage, so we can quantify using training load points. We're going to talk a lot about points. Points is the magic sauce. We're going to optimize it. So we're going to start, I don't mean to be picking on you, Gretchen. I'm going to give her just a little bit of exercise, low points. And then I'm going to watch her response. So the dose is just a little bit of blue and green, just a few points. Maybe she even starts at 15 minutes a day. That's fine. We have a starting point. We have some data about her physiology. We gave her a motivational tool, and now we want her to be successful. We're going to give her a little more. I'm going to get a little more. So I'm going to tell you the story about getting a little more and a little more. I was lecturing in Australia, and because I was doing an Ironman there, and they asked me to come over and speak at a big conference they were having, and the audience was really large, and at the end of it, this one hand comes up, and it's the owner of the company that put together this. And he said, Sally, I sat there and I listened to what you're saying. I hope you're listening to what I'm saying, and I have this one question. Will Heart Zones training work on horses? And I went into my answers, and if I don't know the answer, I'll say I don't know. And I said, I think so. I think physiology is physiology, but I'm not an equine physiologist. I'm not a horse physiologist. And, but I suspect that our stress response adaptation works on horses. And he said, okay. May I have permission to take one of your books, and I've written quite a few books on this subject, and can I take the word human out and put the word horse in? And can I go and take my little heart rate monitors to these quarter horse ranches in Australia? Australians are very competitive, and they bet a lot of money on horse races. And I would like to train the horses using your Heart Zone training system. I said, go for it. And the reason I'm telling you the story is I want you right now to think in your head, how can I take what I learned today and apply it to physical therapists, people with Parkinson, some of the things you shared with me earlier, my personal health and fitness. And so I gave him the text, and he put the word horse in, and he went around Australia, and he took a heart rate monitor and the book, and he went to the trainers at the horse ranches and said, I got a new way to train. And they laughed at him, and they ridiculed him. And they said no, because they trained the way the person taught them before to train, and that person was trained by the person before them. So he then said, I've never owned a horse before, but I'm going to go out and buy a horse. That's commitment. So he buys this horse, and he calls me on the phone. He said, you know, I believe it's going to work too, and no one will believe me, so I'm going to show him. And he buys this horse, and I said, I'm kind of curious, what'd you pay for the horse? And he said, oh, Sally, I paid $6,000. And I said, ooh, how much do horses cost in Australia? He said, well, the beginning horse costs $100,000, and the really good horses are $500,000. I said, you got the worst horse in the world, didn't you? And he said, yes. They wouldn't sell me a horse. So no one would sell him a horse. He bought this thoroughbred horse for $6,000, the bottom of the bucket horse. And he started training him. And he did exactly what I'm telling you. He started him in the blue and the green zone, the horse. He put a heart rate monitor on the horse. And he put the watch on the saddle, and he didn't ride. He got somebody to ride this horse, and he started low points. I'm just going to give the horse just easy training at first. And then a month or however long, and then he added a little yellow and orange, and he measured their thresholds. And he started collecting data on the horse. Then he started some interval training, and he built this huge aerobic base. A huge aerobic base is T1 and below. This horse could go forever. Then he added some speed training on. Came time for the first race of the horse, and the horse is named Lovestad. And is a 2-year-old, and there are all these 2-year-olds at the horse race, and Lovestad was 10-to-1 odds to win, which is like not horrible. He was going to lose. Nobody knew who Lovestad was. They knew he had no credentials in his DNA and his breeding. And the gate goes off, and he was just like a 2-year-old. He just sprinted straight ahead. You know how 2-year-olds are when they say, go? And Lovestad says, I'm going as fast as he can, and he takes first place at the first turn. You know it's coming, huh? So he gets to the second turn, and miraculously, he's still leading the pack. And he gets to the third turn, and the horses are all still behind him, and he hits the fourth turn in the track and picks it up and wins the race. I forgot to tell you that Mike bet $100,000 that he would win. 10-to-1 odds. Mike calls me on the phone. Sally, you're in the wrong business. You're selling these books for $10 and $20. You ought to buy a lousy horse. And I said, well, Mike, what are you going to do now? And he's going to say, I'm going to add a little more points on the horse. I'm going to give him a little more exercise. I'm going to add a little more high zone training. He's going to get fitter and fitter. Stress. I'm going to give him recovery. I can measure it. I can collect data. I can get this horse really fitter. So it's time for the second race. So he does that. You always have to rest after a race, recover, then train back up. It's 4 weeks later. Lovestad's 8-to-1 odds. Lovestad gets in the worst horse in the field with pedigree and cost, gets in there and wins the race. So they call him on the phone and they say, what drugs are you giving your horse? And Mike said, drugs? I'm using a heart rate monitor. I'm using science. And they said, no, you've never owned a horse. You have a horrible horse. And Mike then had bet another $100,000. On 8-to-1 odds, Mike wins again. So it's the betting people that are calling him saying, you know, you're rigging these races. So it's time for the third race. Mike does everything. Lovestad recovers, gives him a little more exercise stress. The gate goes off. Lovestad sprints out, leads at the first turn. The second turn he's leading. The third turn he's leading. Gets to the fourth turn, and he trips. Oh, no. Yeah. And he didn't make it alive out of that race because broken bones and horses. Mike calls me on the phone, and he said, I'm really sick, you know. It wasn't the $100,000 I lost betting. It's that I overtrained Lovestad. I gave him too much of this wonderful stuff called exercise. And when you're overtrained and you're racing, you can break down. And a horse race breaks a leg. The good part about that story is this works on everybody, kids, horses, weight loss, stress. If we just do the first thing, which is educate, train, put on a monitor, put on a tool, and keep going. So this is our dose response that I've been sharing with you and why it works, and it's how human physiology works. We do not want monotony. Monotony is doing the same thing all of the time. We want a lot of variation. And now would you, in your upper right corner of your page, would you put your ambient heart rate one more time? And we are now going to do what's called an ambient heart rate assessment. Ambient heart rate I defined is at rest, when you're awake, when you're in a sitting position. Resting heart rate is when I wake up in the morning. It's really an important number to get. You can do that by putting on a transmitter belt and looking at your Blink armband, Blink watch. You can put on a Blink armband and an iPhone, and you can get your resting, waking up heart rate. So would you now flip back? Yes.
On the waking heart rate, you're taking that lying down, right?
Yes.
First thing lying down,
yeah.
No sitting up yet.
Yeah. Okay. So what I do is I'm in bed, I do some, I wake up and I think like cats and dogs. What do they do when they first wake up? They stretch. So I'm laying there, I put on a transmitter belt. Now I put on a Blink armband because armbands are so easy to use. And as I'm just kind of laying there to do some stretching, I just measure that. And when people measure things, they're more accountable. So that's another reason to find out what is my resting heart rate. Ambient heart rate is that heart rate. And last week I was in Las Vegas and I was meeting with a businessman, and he is adopting the Heart Zones training system on a global basis with his company. And I said, well, let's put on a little Blink armband. Let's just start while we're having this meeting. And I like to do that in meetings. Let's just, start looking at our heart rate. And he's sitting there, and his ambient heart rate was 90. Okay. 90 on our chart means guess where he is. And he looks at me and said, this Blink armband is broken. I said, well, let's do this the old way. Let's do this. Let's measure it every way. And it was over 90. And he said, I cannot believe it. I was a professional athlete. My heart rates used to be in the 50s and 60s. How did they get to 90, Sally? I said, it's your heart is talking to you. Your heart is telling you something when your ambient heart rate is that high. And we're going to do the delta. It's called orthostatic. That's good.
Don't worry, it's
Okay,
water.
I want you to drink because your data will be better. And you're going to lie down for 2 minutes, and I say you're going to be in a prone position on your stomach, your back, whatever you're comfortable, elevate your knees, whatever, I need you comfortable for 2 minutes. And then you're going to get your lying down heart rate. Then you're going to stand up for 2 minutes, and you're going to have your standing heart rate. The difference, delta is, delta is a Greek word for difference or change. Now in your brain, think, lying down, will it be low?
Lower,
Standing up, it's going to be,
higher.
should it be hugely high?
It might go up that high.
But what do you want?
Moderate to middle.
Yeah,
Close to range.
yeah, you want it to, your body go, it doesn't matter, I'm lying down, I'm standing up, I'm fit. If you are under a lot of stress right now, if you haven't recovered from the workout before, if you're about to get sick with a cold or something like that, this is the first indication there's something wrong, is your delta heart rate. Athletes do this every day. They wake up in the morning, they're lying down, they get their resting heart rate, they stand up and they get their delta heart rate. You get two really key data points by just simple little test. I just want to briefly go over and impress upon you the importance of the different zones that we're training. What happens in the zones is huge from a physiological point of view, and you can read about them. A lot of people say, Sally, I don't want to train below T1. It's too easy for me. And I can't urge you enough how important at low threshold, at T1 and below, you spend a lot of time. The way endurance works is you build this really big aerobic base. It's like a pyramid, and at the top is this red training, and you can have a really tall pyramid, but if your aerobic base is low and your pyramid goes high, that's when injuries and disturbances of the body and that kind of thing happen. Then this is all the benefits between the first threshold and the second threshold, between T1 and T2. These are the wonderful things that happen. You're going to burn lots of calories. You're going to enjoy your aerobic capacity, the ability to process oxygen. And for fat to burn, you have to have oxygen. So oxygen is really, really important in your response. Here's what happens above T2. The time-crunched person likes to do a lot of this high-intensity training. It's sometimes been referred to recently as HIIT, H-I-I-T, high intensity interval training is what that stands for. Thank you for helping me, the CrossFitter in the back there on that one. And there are tremendous benefits. And the red zone, zone 5, has been criticized by a lot of people, and I want to herald how wonderful training in all these zones is as well. Now, okay, I'm holding Be a Better Runner. No. It's a brand new book. It's 50% is on the science, and it's a technical book. But what Carl and his research and other researchers around the world have discovered is that if you spend all your time in this yellow, golden, wonderful yellow zone that's great for weight loss, then that's moderate intensity training. That's why it's called the moderate zone. And you don't get enough recovery to be able to get to the red zone when you want to do your intervals. So if you're an athlete, and only listen to me if you're interested in athletic performance, you spend 80% of your time in blue and 20% of your time in red and little to no in yellow. Hold on just a second, I'll get to it. So the only time you're in yellow is when I'm going from blue to red and I'm doing my intervals. I go through yellow. If you are fitness, if you're interested in your health and your fitness, you spend lots of time in this yellow zone because it's so robust in what the benefits are. So training is goal-based. So if your goals are to lower your blood pressure, to burn fat, to increase my endurance, I am in that black hole a lot. If I want to get faster and get on the podium, I'm not going to spend much time there. It is accepted that you need to exercise every single day. That is a fact of our life. We are built in the animal kingdom to move. And how you move and what your goals are for performance versus being healthy and fit are very different. Ready? Measurement of training is on page 34. And this is, again, about the magic sauce called points. We know what points are. They're training load, how much exercise we're getting. Here's how we calculate them. And the example that Tim just used, I am training harder and getting slower. So I'm training in these high zones all the time, and they will cause deconditioning. You'll be less fit if you spend all your time up here. So we need time here. We need, depending what our goals are, if it's weight loss and health, I'm going to spend time here. If I'm going to go performance, I'm going to go here. And that takes us to calculating these points so that we understand them better. And on page 34, if you would, this is how training load is calculated. It's time in zone. So 1 minute in blue is worth 1 minute. 1 minute in green is worth 2 because it's zone 2. Okay, so it's more, as I go up higher, and this is like a thermometer. As I go higher, I get into hotter colors, and as I get lower, okay, I get in. So we're about to go do our next activity called the 2 by 4 minute test. This test is in the training packet if you've won a training packet of cards. And the 2 by 4 minute test is your green card, but we're going to take it and use our syllabus right now. You're going to go 2 minutes to your T1, and you're going to you're going to go for 4 minutes at T1. You're going to hold it for 4 minutes, and during that 4 minutes, we are going to validate that you're with some words to describe it, that you can, that you are indeed, don't want to adjust it 5 beats one way or 5 beats the other way. Then you're going to take a 2 minute recovery. You're going to go back down into blue. We're going to use the big board in our Blink watches. We're going to go 4 minutes at T2. And then I'm going to ask you the question, can you talk? Is it comfortable? So we're going to validate that the first test, can you speak comfortably? We got good numbers, okay?